What's up, Headless Horde? Welcome back to the channel. So a few days ago, it was announced that Warner Brothers wants to bring to the big screen Game of Thrones. Now, there is not too much information on this yet. And is it going to be one movie? Is it going to be a trilogy? We don't really know yet. But in this video, I want to talk about my 4 ideas that I think would make a terrific movie. All right, so before we get started on the list, if you could do me a massive favor, smash that like button, subscribe if you're new, and let's go ahead and get to this thing. The first story that I believe would make a terrific trilogy would be Aegon's Conquest. Now, there are rumors right now too that there will be a television series based on exactly this. So I don't think this is the way they are moving, but I think it would make a great trilogy because there's so much content in this part of Game of Thrones. So the plot would basically be a movie that would follow Aegon Targaryen and his sister wives, Rhaenys and Visenya, and their dragons as they embark on the conquest to unify the 7 kingdoms of Westeros. Starting from the moment Aegon lands on Blackwater Rush, this is later on, this is known as King's Landing. It could explore the political challenges and betrayals and battles as Aegon overcomes various Westerosi lords and clans facing resistance from mighty houses like Lannisters, Starks, and Gardeners. The film would also dive deep into Aegon's actual motives, which, whether it's purely of power or destiny or a deeper vision of Westeros. Iconic scenes would include things like the burning of Harrenhal, the Field of Fire, and the establishment of the actual Iron Throne. So why would this work as a trilogy? Well, it offers plenty of dragon-fueled action, there's legendary battles, there's an amazing backstory of how the Iron Throne in Targaryen dynasty comes into actual power, plus audiences are already intrigued by the Targaryen history, thanks to House of the Dragon. But again, I know that HBO has talked about possibly making this its own series. I just don't know how grand it will be compared to having this on the big screen in a movie trilogy. But as we know, HBO does put out a fantastic product. Hopefully, though, they just don't cut the cost of making these series like they did in House of the Dragon Season 2. The second plot line would have to be Robert's Rebellion. Now, there's a lot of different reasons why this would be absolutely amazing to see on screen. So the first, the plot. The movie would revisit the rebellion that set up the original Game of Thrones series. It would dive into Robert Baratheon's quest to unseat the Mad King, Aerys II Targaryen, after Rhaegar Targaryen's kidnapping of Lyanna Stark. The film could be framed from Ned Stark's perspective, starting with him learning about Lyanna's abduction, joining the rebellion, and finally ending with the Battle of the Trident and the sack of King's Landing. This would also open up mystery surrounding Jon Snow's true patronage, adding an emotional layer for longtime fans. So why does this work? Well, this era is already well known to fans and would also feature some of their favorite characters returning from Game of Thrones just in a younger age. Plus, it's packed with dramatic moments like the deaths of Rickard and Brandon Stark, Jon Arryn's call to arms, and Robert's personal battle with Rhaegar, while setting the stage for the Stark-Lannister-Baratheon dynamics seen later in Game of Thrones. Plus, not to mention, we would get a ton of characters that we already know. We would have Robert Baratheon. We would have a younger Ned Stark. We would probably have Tywin Lannister. We would definitely have Jaime and Cersei Lannister. We could have characters possibly like the Hound. Characters, again, that we have I've seen on screen before. Again, just all much younger because it does take place leading up to Game of Thrones, but it does take place further back in the past, which we do see Bran. We see the scene where Jon Snow is born, and Bran Stark is looking on. So again, the characters would be much younger, but there's quite a few that we could have in play here. Possibly Stannis Baratheon, possibly Renly Baratheon. So again, I think it will be the best way to go, and if it was up to me, this is what I would do. But I have two more that I want to go over with you guys. The next one is probably a little controversial, and then the last one is going to be very controversial. So, plot number 3. I think what we might get is a retelling of the final season of Game of Thrones. Now, originally, Dan and Dave wanted to, along with HBO, make a Game of Thrones movie and put it out into the theater to end the series. Now, you might be saying, well, Game of Thrones has never been in the movie theater, so why would they do that? Well, if you remember, at the end of season 4, the final 2 episodes were released as a limited release in movie theaters. I know personally, me and my wife drove 2 hours to go see this. It was amazing to see it on the big screen. Again, the one is the battle at Winterfell, which is incredible. One of my favorite episodes of all time. But I think that they may want to maybe retell the story, possibly from a different perspective, possibly trying to, not, I don't want to say retcon what has happened, but I think maybe just saying this is a Game of Thrones movie and this is what it is. And people who are going to see it are probably going to go see it because they know the characters. And it just gives you a different perspective of maybe what happened. Because I think they really did mess up that last season. I don't know if they would retell the entire season in movie form, or if it would just be maybe the big 2 battles and what happens and how it happens. But I think it could be a way to help fix it a little bit. The only drawback I have from this theory would be it's already been 5 years. I don't really know at this point if it's going to be fixable. Again, that's like saying let's go back and fix the sequel trilogy in Star Wars. I don't think at this point, it's been so long, people just don't care anymore. But that is one theory that has been floating around and I've kind of been thinking about. All right, so here we go. Plot 4, and this is what I think is most reasonable of what we might see. Again, I'm on record saying I would love to see Robert Baratheon's rebellion on there. I think it will be epic. It's a different story. We have a lot of characters we already know. But I feel that all signs are pointing toward a telling of what happens after Bran the Broken takes the throne. I think we're going to get a continuation of the story. Now, we know that the show Snow, which it was being called, has been scrapped. And this is the one that Kit Harington was trying to come up with an idea and write along with George R.R. Martin. And, part of the problem is George R.R. Martin, you need to go finish the books first before you start talking about sequels. And, they just never had anything concrete. It was just a big rumor that, YouTubers, people on Twitter, fans, we all kind of blew up like we were going to be getting this thing soon. And, you know how that works. But after that being scrapped, we have heard now a few different actors coming out saying they would return if others returned as well. Recently, in an interview, Sophie Turner, who plays Sansa Stark, said she would be very interested in coming back. And we know Kit Harington is interested. Macy Williams has voiced her opinion on possibly coming back to the world of Westeros as well. So right there, you have 3 of the main characters. Now, villain-wise, I have absolutely no idea where they would head with the story, and this might be a big reason why that the show is scrapped to begin with. I personally would make Bran the enemy. I would turn that story around to make it make a little more sense why he actually became the king, and it would be almost like a civil war type deal. So that's the route I would go. So among those main characters, we still have Tyrion and Bronn. We have Devils. We have Grey Worm. So they're all still alive. We have Samwell. So what I would do if I was creating a sequel to Game of Thrones, obviously we can resurrect. So we have to resurrect Daenerys. That's the first thing. Now, granted, in the scheme of things, the way she died, it made sense for what they did to the characters. And there's still a couple Red Witches out there that could probably get this job done. We know Drogon is still alive, so there's got to be something they can come up with or something in the lore that would allow this to happen. This is probably my biggest pet peeve with Dan and Dave when they created the final season, is that there's not too much foreshadowing that Daenerys is going to turn into the Mad Queen. You know, the whole purpose of her story arc was that she wanted to do everything that was different than her ancestors. She wanted to free slaves. She wanted to, conquer and make it a better world. And then she ends up becoming just one of her ancestors, which I just think was a huge, huge miss. Now, her death obviously made sense, but I think we can bring her back. Jon came back. We could probably bring back Dany. I definitely think there would be some type of conflict, maybe between Grey Worm and Jon at some point. I think that would be a cool little side quest or something like that. Although if Dany comes back, Grey Worm could come back to her. So I don't know how exactly that would work out. But again, I think this is the way we're leaning. I really do. As much as I would love to see Robert's Rebellion, I think that they're going to try to fix or at least make that last season better. And I don't know how people are going to feel about it. I'm okay with it as long as it's done correctly, because I love those characters so much, and I wanted a season 9. I wanted something more to happen. I just didn't want it to end the way it did, because I still am not a huge fan of Bran being on the throne. And yes, you could say all you want about, well, they didn't want to give you Dany and Jon on the throne and happy ever after. But the problem is that the way the show was structured, with the whole prophecy of the prince that was promised, the whole prophecy of fire and ice, it just made sense. And then to have one die and one go off to the far north and live out his days, and none of it ends up really mattering in the long run. So I think that's what they need to fix. They need to bring back the fire and the ice, and I think they do need to be on the throne together, and I think that is the proper way to end the series. But you guys, let me know down in the comments, what do you think? Are you excited for this? Do you want to see a sequel from the original series? Would you rather seen one of the other ideas that I said in this video? Let me know all that down in the comments. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to keep those heads on, and I'll see you guys in the next video.